Messieurs and Mademoiselles, it is with deepest pride and greatest pleasure that we welcome you tonight. And now, we invite you to relax. Let's pull up a chair as the elementary proudly presents some learning. Be our guest, be our guest. Put our service to the test. Take your child by the hand, Sherry, and we'll provide the rest. Reading phonics fluency, improve skills we guarantee. Try the new stuff, it's stupendous. Don't believe me, ask the students. They can sing, they'll have fun. Reading skills are number one, and the learning here is never second best. Go on, unfold your mind. Take a glance and find you'll be our guest. We are guest, be our guest. Reading cubes, learning play, dice and letters, hip hooray. We'll prepare and learn with flair, a learning cabaret. You're on board and you've shared, but the meeting's all prepared. No one's gloomy or complaining while the teacher's entertaining. We tell jokes, I do tricks with my future reading tips, and it's all in perfect taste that you can get. Reading is a gas, you've won your own free pass to be our guest. If you're stressed, it's shared reading we suggest. Be our guest, be our guest, be our guest. Be our guest, be our guest, be our guest, please be our guest.
Good evening to all of the families who've joined us tonight as we get real about reading. My name is Loretta Henderson, and I'm the elementary principal at Milton Union Elementary. And I, along with Northridge and Bradford schools, would like to welcome you to this virtual literacy event. Before I hand it over to Lisa Combs, we have a few housekeeping items. Your cameras have been turned off and your microphones have been muted. If you feel like you've missed something, that's not a problem. The event will be recorded and posted to each district's website and or social media for future viewing. At the end of this presentation, we also have a few minutes that you can ask questions that you may have about the activities that Lisa will be showing us tonight. You can type your questions in the chat box below. There will be a short survey after the session ends. Please take a couple of moments to complete that so we can use your feedback as we plan future literacy events. If you've already completed that survey, thank you so much. You don't need to complete it again unless you have new feedback to provide. Okay, Lisa, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Loretta. It's nice to be with you all again this evening. Very excited to talk about rhyming today. Rhyming is a really important skill and one we don't think about a lot, even though we're surrounded by it all the time in musical lyrics and in jingles and commercials on TV and in a lot of our favorite books. So recently was the National Reading Day, and a lot of people that coincides with Dr. Seuss's birthday. And so a lot of people have been reading Dr. Seuss favorites, and one of the reasons that those are favorites is because they do have a lot of rhyming. So we're going to talk today about finding books at the library or in used bookstores or any place that you happen to be able to pick up some great reading material for your kids. When you find books that have good rhymes in them, that is an awesome thing to read aloud to your kids and have fun with. And also oftentimes are good entry-level reading materials for your child to read, because it really enhances their ability to have a good rhythm when they read. And that's important. It's called fluency, where they're reading with expression and with fluidity so that they understand what they're reading better. And it's also good because rhyming helps kids develop an ear for all of those important sounds that go together to make new words and word patterns. So that's why it's such an important skill, why it's so important to read and tell nursery rhymes to kids. And oftentimes also kids just remember things that rhyme better, just like we might know the lyrics to a song that we haven't heard for 10 years. But when it comes on the radio, we remember those words because they have a rhythm and a rhyme to them. So rhyming is an awesome thing. And tonight's activity is going to be about learning about rhymes. So I want you to think about just grabbing some books off of your child's bookshelf, or go to the library and your librarian can direct you to some books that have great rhymes. Or again, stop by a used bookstore. I always buy used books because there's so many good books and I love to read so much that it's a great way for me to build my collection without spending a lot of money. But for instance, Green Eggs and Ham. I read this one to my granddaughter the other night, and she was finding it so funny because of the rhymes, such as, you guys are familiar. Would you like them in a house? Would you like them with a mouse? I would not eat them in a house. I would not eat them with a mouse. And so when we give exposure to kids, we can have some conversation about what were the words that rhymed in that sentence, mouse and house. What I want you to do is take it to that next level, and I'm going to ask you to then later, after you've finished the book, go back and try to find the rhymes, and you're going to help your child put the word mouse on one side of the card and house on the other, because we're going to make puzzles, word puzzles, and do a game with word puzzles. So we would write mouse on one side and house on the other side. Now, when I say one side or the other, I'm saying left and right, not front and back, left and right, because then you're going to let your child cut it in between those words. And the challenge is to cut each card in a really unique pattern so it makes a puzzle that goes together. So later, when they're trying to match rhyming words, those words will fit together. So I'm just going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut it this way and that way, so that of all my rhyming pairs, this will be the only one that fits together just that way. So I'll show you a few that I've already made. We read Cat in the Hat, my granddaughter and I. So we made a card for cat and hat, and she cut it so that it will fit together later when we mix up all the pieces. We read Fox in Socks. You guys might be familiar. Remember Fox in Socks? And so we kept track of words in that book that rhymed, and we made word puzzles that went together for that one. So you can do this just as you read books with rhymes in them and you come across them. Then later you can say, were there any words that rhymed in that book? And let's make some new word puzzles out of them, because then we'll show you what the game you'll play later. So let's say, for instance, you chose to read Together by George Ella Lyon. She's one of my favorite authors. She has beautiful illustrations, and this is a book she writes in verse. So it says, you cut the timber and I'll build the house. You bring the cheese and I'll fetch the mouse. So we had house and mouse. You salt the ice and I'll crank the cream. Let's put our heads together and dream the same dream. So what words rhymed in that book so far? We had house, mouse, we had cream and dream. So cream and dream could go on a card. So I'll write that down real quick on the two halves of my card, cream and dream. And again, you can cut some of them. You can have your child cut some of them. And it's kind of fun. You can even get craft scissors that make really funny patterns. I've got ones that have zigzags on them, but you can use regular scissors, or you can get fancy scissors that cut in different directions. But you see how that's a different cut than my other one, right? So let's say maybe I don't want to read a whole book. Maybe it's bedtime and I don't have time to read an entire book to my child. I always like to have collections of poems on the shelf. And my granddaughters know, and my kids knew when they were little, my boys, that on some nights when we had baseball practice and we had to get baths and dinner was a little bit later than usual, that we may not have time for a whole story. So we might just have time for a poem or two. So I like to keep collections of poems. This is something I collect when I go to the used bookstore. I look for collections of children's poems. This is Robert Louis Stevens' Stevenson's Child's Garden of Verses. It's very old, but kids still love the poems. This was one of the poems that my mom used to read me when I was little. So that tells you how old it is. Very old. My shadow. I won't read the whole thing. I have a little shadow that goes in and out with me, and what can be the use of him is more than I can see. He's very, very like me from the heels up to the head, and I see him jump before me when I jump into my bed. The funniest thing about him is the way he likes to grow, not at all like proper children, which is always very slow, for he sometimes shoots up taller like a big red rubber ball, and he sometimes gets so little that there's none of him at all. So you see how those rhymes help us read with fluidity and expression, and it makes it fun to read and to listen to. But it also helps kids hear the patterns of different words. So again, going back through that and asking your child, listen for any rhyming words. Let's be detectives and try to find all the words that rhyme. It's important to help kids listen for rhymes and not just look for them, because sometimes it's easy to see that fox and box are rhyming because they both end in OX, which is great, but it's a really important skill to also be able to hear the words as they rhyme. So you could read the sentences again and see if your child's a good detective to find the words that rhyme. I have a little shadow that goes in and out with me, and what can be the use of him is more than I can see. And help them listen to see if they can identify me and see. And if they can, as you read that poem, then later, that's a good word to write down. Me on one half, see on the other half. Cut that into a word puzzle, and we can keep growing our word puzzles as we go. Because then what you'll have as you continue to grow your pile of word puzzles is you'll have a fun game to play where you take turns trying to draw for matching puzzle pieces. Another of my favorite authors for poems is Shel Silverstein, and he has wonderful collections of poems that kids think are hilarious, and I do too. So this one is really super short. It's about a dragon named Don, and it says, Don the dragon's birthday. Here he comes across the lake. He's coming for his birthday cake. Sing happy birthday, Dragon Don, and watch him blow the candles on because he's a dragon. He doesn't blow the candles out. He blows them on because he breathes fire. Kids love Shel Silverstein's funny little poems. And again, you can say, what are the rhyming words in that poem? There's cake and lake, there's Don and on. So just play with as many different books and poems that you can find that have rhymes and accumulate all these word puzzles, because then you can take turns drawing like a Go Fish game and try to find matching words. So here I've got a piece that's cat. Now I have to wait and try to draw until I can find words that match. Cat and dream. Not so much. They don't fit together, but I'll keep those because then whoever has the most matches after we draw, maybe you'll draw lake, and then the next one you'll draw is box. Nope, they don't fit together, but you keep those because you might have matches by the end of the game. You can also encourage kids who aren't writing yet and maybe not know how to spell all their rhyming words, but they know what they mean. So you could maybe have them do puzzles that are pictures of rhyming words. Cat and bat would be an example. Or you could even make puzzles with a cat, picture of a cat, and the word cat. And those are all fun ways to play so that you can have those pieces. And you could also play it as a memory game so that you put all the pieces out like a concentration game. And then you have to remember where the rhyming word was in the grid that you laid out. So you can play with those in a number of different ways. You can keep score, or you can just give all of the cards pieces to your child to practice and play with in the car or at the kitchen table while they're waiting on dinner, or anytime when you have a little time to spare. You can also use the journal, the writing journal that you were given in your packet, and either you or your child, or you could take turns drawing picture clues and then letting each other figure out the rhyme from the picture. So in this one, I drew something and something else. What do you think the rhyming pair is? It's a dog and a log. So I even put a sentence down here where my child could fill in. The dog is on a log. The next one, can you see it? It's a clock and a sock. And again, your child could draw some pictures and quiz you to see if you can figure out the rhyming word. And the sentence was, the clock is by a sock. The last one is really tricky. Can you tell what it is? There's a table inside. So what do you think this building might be called that would rhyme with table? It's a stable. It's a house for horse, right? The table is in a stable. Did you notice that I used on, by, and in? Those are called directional words. In, under, between, on, by. Those are all directional words, and that's a great activity to do to help your child practice directional words as well as their rhyming words. I hope that gives you an idea of a fun activity you can do with your child, and I encourage you to take some time as often as possible to read rhyming books with your children and poetry, because it's a great way to build their vocabulary, to build their fluency and their reading comprehension. Do we have any questions before we call it an evening?
Right now, I do not see any questions that have been posted.
Okay. We'll give it just a minute to see if anyone is typing or has a thought that they're trying to put together for a question. And just remember, keep adding to your child's word puzzles. Let them keep adding. So even when they're reading a book on their own, just encourage them that when they come across a word pair that rhymes, to go ahead and take one of those index cards that we gave you in your packet, write the words on the left and right side of the card, cut it in a funky pattern so that it won't match any other word in their word stack, and then they can quiz you on them and see how many of them you can match. Or maybe they can play it with a sibling or a friend. All right.
Tara, I can see you have your hand up. Do you have a question? You need to type that in the Q&A box.
I'm glad you saw that, Kim. I was not
Didn't
paying
see that
attention
either.
to the hand raised.
You want me to turn on her mic?
If Kara's like me, she may have accidentally hit the raise hand button. I did that in a seminar the other day.
Yeah, that's fine. Tara, I ask you to unmute if you have a question. If you don't, that's fine.
And encourage your kids too that they can decorate these puzzle pieces as well. They can use crazy color markers. They can use stickers, however they want to decorate them to make it as fun as they want. All right.
All right. Thank you so much, Lisa, and all of you who were able to join us this evening. This wraps up this evening's event. If you play the game, take a picture and email them to your child's teacher or building principal, and we will add it to the introduction video. Please complete the short survey after we close the event to provide feedback if you have not already. And thanks again for joining us. Have a great evening, and we hope you join us next Tuesday at 7 p.m. to learn another literacy activity with Lisa. Have a great evening, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.